My name is Rebecca. I'm 48 years old, and for most of my adult life, I never imagined I'd be referred to as the woman who raised someone else's children. But that's exactly what happened. Because my younger sister Diana walked away when it mattered most. Diana and I were never close, even growing up. She was 46 now, 2 years younger than me, but she always acted like she was better than the rest of us. Snobby, cold, dismissive. While I spent my teenage years buried in books, Diana was more concerned about popularity, boys, and pushing every boundary our strict working-class parents tried to set. As soon as we both graduated high school, we went our separate ways. I enrolled in college with a partial scholarship. Diana moved in with her older, wealthy boyfriend. He was her ticket out of our modest house, out of responsibility, out of the life that, according to her, she was too good for. Diana had her first children young, twin girls at 20, then a son a year later. My parents were thrilled at first, even if they were also worried. She had no job, no degree, no real direction in life, just this relationship and 3 tiny lives depending on her. Her boyfriend, thankfully, provided financial support, but Diana never married him, a choice she would regret later. He cheated, of course he did, and left her. He paid child support, signed away his rights, and disappeared like fog at dawn. Just like that, Diana was a single mom of 3 under the age of 4, with no income, no partner, and no clue how to be a parent, and that's when the calls started. At first, it was our parents who begged me to help. Just for a little while, they said. She's struggling, but she's trying. I didn't want to get involved. Diana had spent her life treating me like I didn't matter. But I couldn't turn my back on those kids. They didn't ask for any of this. So I helped. I sent money when I could, never a lot since I was still working my way up in a low-level office job, but enough to buy diapers or food when she fell short. Our parents chipped in too. It wasn't enough to make her comfortable, but it kept the lights on and the fridge semi-stocked. The thing is, Diana didn't want to be a mother. I could see it plain as day. She resented those kids, resented being tied down. She'd talk about how they ruined her life, how they were the reason she couldn't finish school or find a better boyfriend. She blamed them every time one of her relationships failed, and when she wasn't working, she was out, dating, partying, trying to reclaim a life she never actually built. She'd leave them home alone, not technically alone because she'd beg friends to check in or drop them at our aging parents' house without warning, and when no one else could take them, she'd beg me. I'd find myself sitting at my dining table with 3 toddlers under 5, feeding them peanut butter sandwiches, wiping their noses, and tucking them in for naps while Diana was off finding herself. And the worst part? They loved her. No matter how much she yelled, no matter how often she was gone, they waited at the window for her. They begged for her attention. And when she didn't show up, they cried into my arms. I was just their aunt, but in time, I became more. As the years passed, my role shifted from supportive aunt to something closer to a second mother. Diana didn't change. In fact, she only grew more resentful of her kids, her life, and anyone who dared to remind her of either. She bounced between minimum wage jobs, always quitting or getting fired. She never had the patience for routine, and even less for responsibility. Babysitters were too expensive, so she leaned on anyone she could guilt into watching the kids. Friends faded away. Our parents were too old and still working to support their modest retirement. That left me. I still had my own life, my own job, but I adjusted everything to be there for them. I took early shifts so I could pick them up from daycare. I skipped vacations. I cooked extra meals and dropped off groceries. I helped with homework on the weekends, even when I was so tired my eyes burned. They were never my responsibility, but they were always my priority. I'll never forget one night in particular. I'd come by unannounced, just a gut feeling. Diana was gone. The twins, barely 10 years old, were trying to feed their little brother a microwave dinner. He was crying. They were crying. The house was freezing because the heat had been shut off again. I stayed the night on their worn-out couch, holding the youngest while the girls clung to me, whispering that they wished I was their mom. It shattered me. I wanted to take them right then and there, but I had no legal rights. Diana was their mother, and though she was careless and cold, she wasn't abusive in the eyes of the law. She provided shelter, food, barely. She didn't beat them, at least not in ways that would show. It was emotional neglect, constant guilt tripping, blaming them for every setback in her life. She'd scream at them for ruining her chances with men. If a date ghosted her, she'd throw a tantrum and tell them, "No one wants to deal with a woman with baggage like you." They learned to tiptoe around her moods, to clean the house and stay silent when she brought men over. And when those relationships fell apart, as they always did, she turned on them. "This is your fault," she'd hiss. "You ruin everything." I spoke to Diana more than once. I begged her to consider therapy, to get parenting help, to let the kids stay with me a few nights a week. She refused, said I was trying to steal her family. She acted like motherhood was a performance she was being judged for, but she never realized there was no one left in the audience. The kids, though, they never stopped hoping. They clung to the dream that one day she'd change, that she'd love them like they needed, but every year chipped away at that fantasy, and with every heartbreak, they turned more to me. Birthdays? I was the one who remembered. Parent-teacher nights? I showed up. When the girls had their first periods, they came to me in tears. When my nephew was bullied at school, he called me from the nurse's office, not his mom. Their hearts were breaking in silence, year after year. By the time the twins turned 18, they didn't even hesitate. They packed their things and came to live with me. A year later, their brother joined. They left Diana's house behind without a single backward glance. She lost them long before that, of course. She just didn't realize it until they walked out the door. When the kids moved in, my home transformed overnight. It was small, just a modest 2-bedroom I'd been living in for years. Suddenly it became a sanctuary, a place that smelled like microwaved popcorn and textbooks, echoed with laughter and the occasional sibling squabble. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like a home. The girls shared a room, and my nephew took the small space I'd used as a home office. We rotated chores, budgeted groceries together, and made it work. They didn't ask for much, just safety, respect, and someone who listened. And I gave them that every day. Diana, of course, didn't take it well. She called me 3 days after the girls moved out. The first words out of her mouth weren't, "Are they okay?" or "Can I talk to them?" It was, "How dare you steal my children?" I'll never forget how cold her voice was. She accused me of manipulating them, of swooping in once they were raised, of trying to make her look like a bad mother. I wanted to scream, to throw every memory of neglect and cruelty back in her face, but I didn't. I told her calmly that her children were adults now. They made their own choices, and they chose to live in a home where they felt seen. She hung up on me. That was the last time we spoke for years. But while her anger faded into silence, my life became fuller than I ever imagined. The kids flourished. They studied hard. They leaned into therapy. They built routines that gave them purpose. And despite everything they'd endured, they never grew bitter. When my nephew got into med school, I cried for hours. Not because I doubted his ability, but because I knew how much he'd fought to believe he was capable of something that big. Diana had always told him he'd never be more than a burden. That day, he proved her wrong. One of the twins, Claire, became a high school English teacher, just like she used to dream about when we read together as kids. Her sister, Maya, opened a small salon downtown. I co-signed on her first loan. She paid it off in under 2 years. They all lived with me for about 4 years, but in truth, I saw them less and less as they grew into their lives. Classes, internships, side jobs, they were hardly ever home, and I didn't mind. That was the goal, to help them launch, to give them roots and then let them fly. Now they're all out on their own. They each have their own places, responsibilities, lives. They still call me auntie almost daily. We have family dinners once a month, even if it's just takeout on my couch. They never forgot what I gave up to be there for them, and I never once regretted it. I never married, never had kids of my own. That just wasn't in the cards for me. But these 3, they gave me something I didn't know I was missing. They filled the spaces that loneliness had carved out years ago and brought color back into a life that had grown gray. I didn't do it for praise. I didn't do it for payback. I did it because it was the right thing to do. But I'll be honest, when they showed up on my birthday with something in hand that I never saw coming, it changed everything. My 48th birthday was never meant to be a big deal. I've always been the kind of person who preferred quiet evenings, a home-cooked meal, and maybe a few close friends stopping by with a bottle of wine and some heartfelt laughter. But this year was different. My nephew Ethan called a week before and told me not to make any plans. "We've got it covered, Auntie," he said, his voice full of that confident energy I'd watched him develop over the years. I smiled and let him take the reins. That Saturday, I walked into a cozy restaurant I'd never been to before. Warm lights, rustic decor, and a long table decorated with little touches that only someone who truly knew me would prepare. Sunflower centerpieces, lemon bars at every place setting, and a stack of my favorite used novels wrapped in a bow. I was stunned. They'd done all of it. Ethan, Claire, and Maya. They had planned every detail. I kept asking how much it cost, half joking, half worried, but Ethan just waved me off with a grin. "This is nothing compared to what you gave us." After dinner, when I was full of pasta and gratitude, the three of them stood together. I could see the nerves in their eyes. Ethan cleared his throat and pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket. "Auntie," he said, "we've talked about this a lot, and we know you never asked for anything. You've always said you did what you did because it was the right thing, not because you wanted something in return. But we've been saving, and we want to do this for you, not out of debt, but out of love." I opened the envelope, and inside was a check, a real jaw-dropping, heart-stopping check. I blinked. "What?" No, this is too much." Claire stepped forward and took my hand. "We're all doing okay now, more than okay. You helped make that possible. You gave us stability when we had none. You gave us love when we weren't even sure we deserved it. This is just a small way for us to say thank you." Maya added, her voice soft, "This isn't about money, Auntie. It's about honoring what you did for us. You never hesitated. You never stopped showing up. You were our mother in every way that mattered." I couldn't hold back the tears. I thought I'd cried when Ethan got into med school, or when Claire bought her first car, or when Maya opened the doors to her little salon. But this, it was different. It wasn't about pride or milestones. It was about being seen, fully, completely, without expectation or performance. And for someone who had lived in the shadows of another woman's failures for so long, being seen like that, it broke me open in the best way. I hugged each of them, told them I didn't need anything, but also thanked them deeply for thinking of me, for showing me that love returned is the greatest gift of all. That night, I posted a photo of us together, just a simple caption. "Raising them was the best decision I ever made. I never expected anything in return, but love, it finds its way back." I didn't think much of it, until a few days later I got a message I never expected. From Diana. I hadn't heard Diana's name in years. Honestly, I didn't even know if she still lived in the state. She had cut ties with all of us, me, our parents, even her own children, after they moved in with me. For a long time, I thought it was better that way. Safer, quieter. But 3 days after I posted that photo from my birthday dinner, a private message popped up in my inbox. It was from Diana. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. My hand hovered over the mouse like it might burn me if I clicked. The last time we spoke, she told me I stole her kids, her exact words. I'd kept the conversation short then, not because I was afraid, but because I knew she wasn't ready to hear the truth. But now? Now, she wrote, "Hey, I saw your post. We should talk." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a 5-word message that made my heart feel like it was sliding down a staircase. I waited a day before replying. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed to breathe. Maybe I needed to talk to Ethan first. He was always the most level-headed of the three, the one who could read people like open books. When I told him about the message, he immediately looked serious. "She saw the post. She saw how well we're doing. That's the only reason she's reaching out," he said flatly. "I know," I admitted, but a part of me hoped maybe, just maybe, it was something more. He shook his head. "Don't give her that power, Auntie." "Still," I replied, "I'm not made of stone." "What do you want to talk about, Diana?" I typed, keeping it cold but civil. Her answer came within minutes, as if she'd been waiting. "I know I made mistakes, but I've missed the kids. I want to reconnect. I thought maybe you could help me reach out. They trust you." I read that message 3 times before closing my laptop. I could feel anger bubbling up, but underneath it was something sharper: disbelief. 6 years, 6 birthdays, 6 Christmases, 6 first job phone calls she never made, and now she wanted back in? Just like that? I didn't respond right away. I went for a walk, needing to think. The cool air helped, but her words kept playing in my head. She wanted me to be her bridge, but I wasn't a bridge. I was the safe harbor. I was the one who held them through the storm she created. That night she called. I didn't want to answer. I wish I hadn't, but I did. Her voice was soft, like she was trying on sincerity for the first time in her life. "They've grown so much. You've done a good job. I feel like I've missed everything." I kept silent. Then she added, "But they're doing well now, and I think they owe it to me, too. I raised them, you know? I sacrificed everything." That's when the silence cracked. "No, Diana, you didn't raise them. You survived next to them. That's not the same." She got defensive, said I was bitter, said I was trying to erase her. Then she crossed the line. "I know they gave you money. I'm not saying I want all of it, but I think I deserve a piece. After all, they're still my kids." I think I stopped breathing for a second. That was it. The real reason. She wasn't trying to mend fences, she was trying to cash in. I felt a cold kind of rage settle in. You don't deserve a cent, and you don't get to rewrite history now that it's convenient for you. She hung up, and I knew it wouldn't be the end. 2 days after that phone call, Diana did exactly what I should have seen coming. She went public. Not with an apology, not with an attempt to reconcile. She posted a long, dramatic rant on Facebook, tagging extended family, old friends, even some people I hadn't spoken to in years. The post was dripping with false humility and self-pity, painting herself as the heartbroken mother whose children had been stolen by her bitter, jealous sister. She wrote, "I know I've made mistakes, but I loved my kids the best I could. I'm heartbroken that my sister not only turned them against me, but is now accepting gifts from them that I believe were meant for me as their actual mother. I raised them for 18 years. She swooped in at the end and stole the credit, and now the reward." I read it with my coffee in hand and almost dropped the mug. She really said reward. My phone didn't stop buzzing that day. Cousins, aunts, even people I hadn't heard from since our parents' anniversary party were messaging me. Some demanded to know what was going on. A few accused me of being greedy. Others told me they were sure there was more to the story. Of course there was, but no one had bothered to ask me first. What hurt most wasn't Diana's lies. I expected those. It was the people who blindly believed her. People who knew how I raised her kids when she couldn't, who saw me at PTA meetings, award ceremonies, and graduation dinners while she was out dating or too tired to show up. I didn't want to respond publicly. I truly didn't. I wanted to keep our pain within the walls of our broken family. But when my niece called me crying because someone from Diana's side accused her of being an ungrateful brat who betrayed her mother, I knew it had gone too far. That evening, I gathered the kids, Ethan, Lila, and Rose, at my place. We sat around the kitchen table, still decorated from my birthday dinner, with plates of leftover cookies between us. I told them everything about Diana's call, her demand for money, and her accusations. I showed them her post. Ethan clenched his jaw. "She said you stole us." "I know," I said quietly, "but I won't respond unless you're okay with it. This is your story, too." They didn't hesitate. Lila stood first. "She left us," she said. "You didn't steal anything, you saved us." The next day, I made my post. I didn't get into the mud with Diana, but I told the truth. I shared how I took care of 3 scared, neglected kids who had nowhere else to turn. I told them how Diana had chosen boyfriends over birthdays and silence over support. I explained that the gift I received wasn't about money. It was about love, gratitude, and decades of showing up when no one else did. Then I stepped back. I thought that would be the end. But the comments rolled in. People started retracting their judgment. A few apologized. Some shared their own stories of raising siblings' kids or being abandoned. Suddenly, Diana's sympathy campaign began to collapse, and that's when she called me again. This time, she wasn't crying. She was furious. "You humiliated me," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own." And I hung up. I haven't heard from her since, but the fallout was far from over. It only took a few hours. After I published my response, the post started circulating among our extended family. Most people had never known the full story, only the version Diana had fed them for years. Some relatives were stunned, others embarrassed, but one thing became clear: the kids were no longer staying silent. That same evening, Ethan texted me a screenshot. It was Diana's comment under my post, attempting to discredit everything. She accused me of manipulating the children and insisted that I only stepped in because I was jealous of her motherhood. Jealous. As if stepping in when she walked away made me envious. I didn't have time to respond because Ethan beat me to it. He replied publicly, tagging her. "Mom, you say you raised us. When? Was it the nights you were out until 2 a.m. while Aunt Rachel helped us with homework? Was it the days you screamed at us because a guy dumped you again? Or was it when you told me I ruined your life by being born?" His words were like lightning cracking open a storm that had been building for years. Next came Lila, more measured but no less powerful. "You only called when you needed something. When we were kids, you used to tell us we were the reason no one loved you. You didn't raise us. You resented us. Rachel gave us stability. She gave us love. You don't get to rewrite history now that we're successful." And finally, Rose. "I used to cry at night, wishing you'd hug me like other moms did. Instead, you slammed doors and called me names. I stopped calling you mom when I realized you never acted like one. Rachel is the only mother I've ever had." There was no coming back from that. The comments blew up. Old classmates, neighbors, even people from our small church community began replying, many of them admitting they'd suspected something wasn't right when the kids always seemed scared or distant. A former babysitter even chimed in, sharing that she quit because of how Diana treated her own children. Diana tried to defend herself, but she was outnumbered. Every lie she posted was met with a quiet, factual correction from one of the kids. No yelling, no insults, just the truth. She deleted her original comment. Then she deleted mine. Then she disappeared, blocked all of us. That night, I sat with Ethan, Lila, and Rose in my living room. None of us said much. The television was playing some rerun, but no one was watching. Lila finally broke the silence. "I didn't want it to come to this, but I'm glad we said it." Ethan nodded. "She's been telling her version for years. It was time someone told ours." "And Rose?" She just leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thanks for letting us speak." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My chest ached with a strange mix of pride and sorrow. They had defended themselves, not as angry children, but as strong adults reclaiming their story. I had never needed validation for what I did. I never raised them for credit, for praise, or for thanks. But hearing them speak their truth? That was more powerful than anything I could have imagined. The day after Diana blocked us all, a strange quiet settled over my life. No more angry calls from relatives. No more cryptic Facebook posts stirring the pot. It was as if the drama had burned itself out, leaving nothing but ashes. And honestly, I felt relief. For the first time in years, I could breathe without waiting for the next shoe to drop. No snide texts, no guilt-tripping messages from extended family who never once offered to help but always had something to say. Just stillness. I spent that weekend cleaning, not just tidying the house, but really cleaning. The kind where you open every drawer, every box, and decide what deserves to stay. At the bottom of my bedroom closet, I found a shoebox. Inside were old photos, some from holidays when Diana still spoke to us, some of the kids when they were small, their smiles wide and innocent. One photo was of all of us at Ethan's 10th birthday. He had frosting on his nose, Lila was laughing mid-bite, and Rose had her arms around my waist, refusing to let go. Diana wasn't in a single one of those pictures. Even back then, she had already started disappearing. I ran my fingers along the edges of those photos and felt a sudden wave of grief. Not for her, but for what I had hoped she could have been. For the mother I had wished my nieces and nephew would one day have. For the sister I used to dream might apologize. That day would never come, and I needed to stop holding space for it. That evening, I sat down with my journal and wrote a letter I would never send. It began simply, Diana, I forgive you, but I can't forget. I wrote about how much I used to envy her as kids, her confidence, her freedom, the way she could charm anyone into anything. I wrote about how I felt invisible whenever she walked into a room, and I wrote about how, even as adults, I still wanted her approval, even after all the cruelty. It hurt to admit that. But it was true. The letter ended with a quiet goodbye. Not a dramatic one, not bitter or angry, just a quiet acknowledgement that I was done trying to fix a bond that only existed in my own heart. I folded the paper, slid it into the fireplace, and watched the flames consume it. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Lila already brewing coffee. She looked over her mug and smiled. "You okay?" "I think so," I replied, and for once I meant it. We sat in silence, the way families do when they've weathered something big and don't need to fill the space anymore. "I'm glad you're our person," she whispered after a while. That simple phrase hit me harder than all the drama of the past few weeks, because that's what I had become. Not a replacement parent, not a stand-in or a backup plan. Their person, the one they chose, the one who stayed. Later that day, Rose texted me a link to a spa weekend package. "You deserve this," she wrote. "Let us spoil you for once." Ethan sent a thumbs-up emoji with, "Booked it, pack your bags." I laughed through tears. It had taken years, but the love I gave, quiet, consistent, unconditional, had come full circle. And even though Diana was gone from our lives, the family we built in her absence was stronger than anything she ever tried to destroy. It's strange how quiet healing can be. After Diana's final message, the one where she tried to flip the narrative and paint herself as the victim, I expected more fallout, more angry calls, more social media chaos, but instead, she vanished into silence, and I didn't miss her. A week passed, then two, and with each passing day, I realized something. I was finally living my life without waiting for someone else to acknowledge my worth. That realization hit me one crisp Saturday morning as I sat on the porch sipping hot coffee. The trees in my backyard had started to turn gold and crimson, signaling that fall was truly here. I pulled the throw blanket tighter around me, watching a squirrel scurry across the lawn with an acorn twice its size. I smiled. For once, my thoughts weren't circling Diana or what she might say next. They weren't tangled in family politics or old wounds. They were here, in this moment, in this little slice of calm I had carved out for myself. Later that day, Lila called. She wanted to meet for brunch at her favorite spot, a cozy, brick-lined cafe just outside the city. She'd recently started dating someone new and wanted me to meet him. "He's quiet, thoughtful, someone who listens," she'd said shyly on the phone. I remembered thinking she would have never trusted someone like that if she hadn't felt safe with me first. When I arrived, Lila waved me over to their table with her usual spark. I watched the way she lit up when she talked about her students, the way her eyes softened when her boyfriend gently touched her hand. This wasn't the girl who used to flinch at the sound of raised voices. This was a young woman who had learned, finally, that love didn't have to come wrapped in conditions. I couldn't help but feel proud. On the drive home, I stopped by the community center where Rose was hosting a small hair and beauty workshop for teens. She'd set up a confidence corner where girls could get styled and talk openly about body image. When I walked in, she lit up. "Aunt Rachel," she called out, waving me over. She introduced me as the reason I learned what love without judgment looks like. My eyes burned. Ethan called me that night. He was working a double shift at the hospital, but he wanted to check in and make sure I wasn't letting Diana's last message get under my skin. I assured him I wasn't. "Good," he said, "because she doesn't get to rent space in your head anymore." We ended the call with laughter and a love you that felt effortless, natural, something we used to reserve for emergencies only. Later, lying in bed, I found myself reflecting on how far we'd all come. From children hiding in corners to adults building lives rooted in kindness, strength, and truth. There had been no courtroom battles, no dramatic showdowns, just quiet choices, choosing to show up, choosing to love, choosing to protect each other when the world didn't. Diana was gone, and for the first time, that absence felt like freedom, not a wound. She didn't get a redemption arc. She didn't earn back our trust. But we found peace anyway, and sometimes that's the truest healing of all. I never planned to speak publicly. For years, I was the kind of woman who kept my head down and did the work silently without recognition. I never asked for credit. I never wanted a spotlight. I just wanted those kids, Ethan, Lila, and Rose, to be safe, to be loved. That was enough. But after Diana's recent message and the phone calls from relatives parroting her twisted version of the past, something inside me snapped. It wasn't rage. It wasn't pride. It was clarity. They had no idea what those kids endured. They didn't see the bruises, not the physical kind, but the emotional ones. They didn't see the nights Ethan cried himself to sleep after Diana screamed at him for eating cereal too loud. They didn't hear the silence in Lila's voice after Diana humiliated her in front of a new boyfriend. They didn't feel the quiet dread Rose carried in her bones, always tiptoeing around the house so she wouldn't ruin her mother's mood. And still, I stayed quiet, for years. But when Diana went online and started claiming I stole her children and her money, the silence became a burden I couldn't carry anymore. She was trying to rewrite history with herself as the victim, and me, the villain. And for a while, people believed her. They always do when the loudest voice wins, so I wrote everything down. It wasn't easy. My hands shook. My throat was tight. I cried more than once, but I wrote it. I shared it on my social media account, the same one I rarely used. I didn't sugarcoat it. I talked about Diana's neglect, about how she weaponized motherhood, about how she belittled her children and used their existence as an excuse for every failure in her life. And I shared the parts that mattered most, how the kids rose above it, how Ethan put himself through medical school while working weekends at a diner, how Lila started tutoring other kids to pay for her textbooks, how Rose worked at a salon to learn the trade before ever opening her own place, how they never let that pain define them. Within an hour, the post spread through our family like wildfire. The same people who once questioned my intentions were now messaging me, apologizing, stunned into silence. One cousin told me, "I wish I had known. I'm so sorry we judged you." But what mattered most wasn't their apologies. It was Ethan calling and saying, "Aunt Rachel, thank you for finally saying it, for telling our story." Lila sent a simple heart emoji, followed by, "You made us visible." And Rose? She posted the story on her own page with the caption, "This is what survival looks like." For the first time, it felt like I had done something not just for them, but with them. We weren't just a family built from broken pieces. We were proof that love, real love, is about showing up, even when no one notices. Diana never replied. She deleted every comment she had made about me. Then she blocked us all again. I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace, because now the story wasn't hidden anymore. It belonged to all of us, and the truth, our truth, finally had a voice. The morning after Diana's outburst on social media, I woke up to silence. Not a single call, not one accusatory message, just stillness. But that peace was short-lived. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a private number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I should. It was Diana. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "I just wanted to talk. No yelling, no accusations," she said. I was cautious. This wasn't like her, but I listened. She admitted in a slow, hesitant tone that she had read every single comment our nieces and nephew wrote under my post. She said it was like watching her own children tell the world they had never loved her, and that no part of her motherhood had mattered. "I didn't know they hated me that much," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought maybe they'd come around. That time would soften the past." There was a long pause, and then she asked, "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" That question pierced something in me I didn't expect. After all the chaos, all the neglect, part of me still wanted to believe in redemption. But I had seen what Diana's version of motherhood had done to those kids. Her idea of love had always been conditional, transactional. "I don't know, Diana," I replied. "You left a lot of wounds, and you haven't done much to show you've changed." She tried to defend herself again, talking about how hard life had been after her boyfriend left, how she had no one to guide her, how overwhelmed she was. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak, but when she finished, I reminded her, I didn't have kids, I wasn't their mother. And yet somehow I showed up. So did mom and dad, even in their old age. You chose not to. I was young. I didn't know how to be a mom. You had 18 years to figure it out, I said quietly. She didn't respond. What followed was a strange silence where I could hear her breathing on the other end. Then she said something that caught me off guard. They offered you money, didn't they? A check. I froze. That's why you posted. That's why this whole thing blew up. And there it was again, that entitlement, that jealousy. I exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. Yes, they gave me a check, but not because I asked. It was their way of saying thank you, something you never said. Her tone shifted immediately. You don't deserve their money. Neither do you, I replied. She grew angry. I'm their mother. I brought them into this world. You did, and then you made them feel like burdens their entire lives. Don't pretend biology earns you loyalty. She cried then, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, broken sound that echoed through the phone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, because Diana had lost what truly mattered and she still couldn't understand why. I'm done chasing this, I told her. I'm not here to keep defending what I did. They're adults now. Diana, if they want to talk to you, they will, but I'm not forcing them, and I'm not apologizing for loving them when you couldn't. She said nothing, so I ended it. Goodbye, Diana. And I hung up. It felt final, like a door closing, not in bitterness, but in peace. She had her chance, and now I was done. 2 weeks passed since my last conversation with Diana. After I hung up that day, there was no follow-up message, no voicemail, just silence. And for once, I welcomed it. I spent the following weekend at a small cabin 2 hours outside the city. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet place tucked beneath a canopy of tall pines. I brought a stack of old photo albums and a bottle of wine, hoping to spend some time reflecting, maybe even healing. One night, I sat by the fireplace flipping through pictures of the kids when they were little, gap-toothed smiles, drawings taped to my refrigerator, birthday cakes we baked together. I remembered one photo in particular, my nephew, age 9, standing proudly next to a science project we'd worked on late into the night. He looked so proud, so full of hope. I remembered that moment vividly, the way he beamed when I whispered, "You did great, kiddo." That night, I cried, not because I regretted anything, but because I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of it all, the years I gave, the love I poured, the quiet sacrifices, and the reality that I would never receive that kind of recognition from my own sister. But what mattered, what had always mattered, was them. Those kids, now adults, were thriving, and knowing I had a small part in helping them build that future, that was enough for me. When I got home, I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew immediately from the handwriting that it was from Diana. I sat at my kitchen table and read it. I know you won't answer my calls, I understand. I'm not writing to apologize because I know words won't fix what I've done. I'm just writing to say, I see it now. Everything I missed, everything I failed at. I thought I was the victim all these years, but I wasn't. I was the one who left scars. You stepped up when I didn't. They love you because you earned it, and I didn't. I've lost them. I've lost you. I'm sorry I tried to twist it into something it wasn't. I just didn't want to be forgotten. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it neatly and tucked it in my drawer. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel sad. I just felt finished. The next day, my nephew called. "Auntie, are you free next Saturday?" "Depends," I said with a smile in my voice. "What do you need?" He chuckled. "Not need, invite. I got accepted into a fellowship program at Johns Hopkins. We're having a small dinner to celebrate. I want you there." My eyes welled up again, happy tears this time. That Saturday, as I walked into the restaurant and saw all three of them waiting, smiling, waving me over, I felt something shift. I wasn't just their aunt anymore. I was family, truly, chosen, loved. We laughed, we toasted, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a backup, not as someone who filled in the cracks, but as someone who mattered. After dinner, my niece leaned in and whispered, "You saved us, you know." I looked at her and shook my head. "No, sweetheart. You saved yourselves. I was just lucky enough to be there while you did." And in that moment, I knew I didn't need Diana's approval. I didn't need anyone to validate the years I'd given. The love had come full circle, and sometimes that's all we ever really want, to be loved back by those we chose to love first.